When Henry Cavill was first cast in The Man of Steel, responses were mixed. They were. Up to this point, he was relatively unknown. He was appearing in lesser-known movies before getting his breakout action movie role in Immortals, which was a 2011 story based on Greek mythology that you guys may remember seeing posters for, but obviously, you never watched it because not many people did. Needless to say, casting a relatively unknown as the most iconic superhero of all time, it was a bit of a hard pill to swallow for some people, especially with the MCU already giving us some upper-tier casting decisions. Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Captain America, Iron Man, respectively. When Man of Steel debuted in 2013, critical reception was extremely divided. But one thing was certain, Henry Cavill is our Superman. Now, some thought he lacked charisma. You can't really blame him for that since the script he was working with was pretty dark and pretty seriously toned. The end of Man of Steel was also heavily criticized for the bloated final battle and questionable killing of Zod. But again, it was the one thing that everybody agreed upon is that Henry Cavill is our Superman. If you just patched up writing and direction, we could have had one of the best big screen Superman movies of all time. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Welcome to Chaos Multiverse, and welcome back to the videos, everybody. That's right. The time has come. We are going to be picking up the slack we've had. It's been a busy year, but we are back with your daily content. Chaos here. Glad to see all of you. So, Henry Cavill's new Superman deal. That's what we're going to talk about, so stick around because this gets really interesting. Make sure you guys drop a like as well. Over the next 7 years or so, the DCEU desperately tried to get people to pay attention. It was like this. It was really like the annoying kid at recess. He pumped out crappy movie after crappy movie while Marvel was busy blowing up every year. Then the Infinity Saga. The failures of the DCEU culminated in the Justice League, which was a final nail in the coffin for many viewers, and it resulted in many core cast members walking away. Ben Affleck, gone. Henry Cavill, gone. And the money was also seemingly drying up. But in 2019, something happened. A little movie called The Joker was released into theaters. It proved that people still cared about the DC universe. They just didn't want to follow the DCEU anymore. A few years later, The Batman hit theaters to a massive round of applause, with many calling it the second best Batman movie behind The Dark Knight. I agree. It was extremely obvious that despite the hatred for the DCEU, the public still loved these characters. They were connected, and something at Warner Brothers needed to change. Now, over the last few months, we've been hearing a lot about the shakeups within the big WB. James Gunn was recently brought on as a major creative consultant, hoping to get their film universe back on track following the success of the Suicide Squad. And now, he is co-CEO of it and moving forward, which is absolutely insane. It is now DC Studios. There's a lot happening. A lot of things making headlines. Just a few days ago, it was confirmed that Henry Cavill will be returning to play Superman once again, likely thanks to the changes within Warner Brothers that has revived his faith in the DC Universe's big screen potential. Now, what's he coming back for? Is it going to be full-time Superman? What is even the current state of the DCEU right now? The original version of Justice League left things in a pretty decent place for continuation, but since that movie, we won't even get started, Warner Brothers likely doesn't want to follow that. Zack Snyder's Justice League was a huge success, but WB made it clear that that movie wasn't canon and they would not be continuing Zack's story. Why? I don't know. But then things got even more confusing. A couple future DC projects directly reference the Snyder Cut. Then on top of all that, DC has been doing fine making movies that aren't even connected to the larger DCEU, which isn't a thing anymore. I need to quit that. It's DC Studios now. Like Joker and the Batman. So what happened? Well, according to some exclusive sources at Giant Freaking Robot, we may have the answers you're looking for, and they are not what you've expected. So according to GFR, Henry Cavill is signed on to return as Superman in 3 movies, all of which are part of the main DCEU timeline. The movies in question, Man of Steel 2, which is most likely a working title, Justice League 2, which is kind of unexpected, and Black Adam 2, which should be obvious to anyone who's seen the first, and for those that don't know, Cavill made a brief, spoiler alert, Cavill made a brief cameo in Black Adam, and Dwayne Johnson himself has been hyping up an eventual full-fledged confrontation between the two characters, so hearing that Supes will appear in the sequel, that's not a shocker at all, and everybody was happy to see him at the end. It also shouldn't be too surprising that Cavill will be starring in another standalone Superman movie, as Cavill is now an A-list actor, and Superman will always it'll put butts in the seats. It will, no matter what. Granted, I fully believe that The Man of Steel 2 is just a working title because Warner Brothers likely doesn't want this new movie to be associated with the original, especially since it's almost 10 years old, and doing a direct numbered sequel after a decade probably hurt their marketing potential. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Instead, I think it's more likely that we're going to get a new standalone Superman movie that exists in the same timeline as Man of Steel, but it's going to be called something different. Give me your best guess as to the title. Just let me know. Maybe it'll just be called Superman or Superman Returns. That's original. Warner Brothers and DC are committed to reviving the public's faith in the DCEU, and while movies like The Suicide Squad and Black Adam have more or less done that right now, they still need to revive their main cast of heroes. The DCEU's versions of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman and Aquaman, they need to be in the fold in a big way. I 100% believe that Henry Cavill is getting another standalone Superman movie. I think WB is going to keep marketing as far away from Man of Steel as possible, but that brings us to the third movie that Cavill is allegedly signed onto. Now, it seems inevitable we would get another Justice League movie. We have to, right? I find it interesting that Cavill's already signed on, if he has. The original Justice League failed for a number of reasons, main one being overambition. Warner Brothers was desperate to get an Avengers-level movie out to the public, but that required them to skip a ton of steps, and it made the movie feel bloated and slow. Then, when Joss Whedon was brought in to trim the fat and make something a little more Marvel-esque, a lot of people think he butchered the entire plot because the task was quite literally impossible. Let me be clear here. I do not blame Zack Snyder or Joss for the failures of the Justice League. Instead, I put the blame on WB for trying to force a movie like this out way too quickly. So while you may be excited to see Cavill put the blue suit on, I'm a little hesitant to get excited when WP may be repeating their old mistakes. Now, I hope I'm wrong. This could be an Avengers 5 scenario where the studio, they know they eventually want to make a second Justice League movie, but they're going to wait until everything is laid out in front of them. Realistically, I think that may be what's going on. But I know I'm not the only one worried about what's going to happen between now and the release of Justice League 2. Are they going to put the effort in, the time? Are they going to be patient? Are they going to pace it right? Is the viewing public even going to care? Honestly, the MCU is very vulnerable right now, so if WB comes out swinging and properly sets up a Justice League movie over the next 4 or 5 years, it could seriously pay off. But then again, I don't think Cavill would sign on to a movie that's not supposed to come out for another 4 or 5 years, so I think you understand why I'm worried. So, when are all these things coming out? And who is making them? Well, GFR claims that their sources are confident that the Man of Steel sequel will be headed by none other than James Gunn. But they don't expect it to hit theaters until 2024 at the absolute earliest. That excites me now. Keep in mind, there's a lot of drama surrounding The Flash, you already know, and that will likely change a number of things about the current DCU timeline. There's a lot of drama with Aquaman too, and a certain female character that you already know, so there's a lot up in the air. Ultimately, I think Warner Brothers is going to try and pull a Days of Future Past here, where they use the old cast to kind of reset the timeline and recast a few of the heroes so they can get back to business as usual. By the end of The Flash, I'm expecting the poorly received DCEU movies to be wiped away into nothingness. The new actor will likely take over the mantle of Flash. The Snyderverse will be definitively killed, and Superman will be in the clear to start telling his own stories again without needing to feel bogged down by the failures of the movies and the original Justice League. But what does that have to do with release dates? Well, The Flash is currently set to release in June of next year, and a number of insider reports have claimed that WB is in full-on panic mode. They're trying to recut a version of the movie that makes it easy for them to cut ties with Ezra Miller while also keeping their future plans intact. That's a hard task. With the news of Cavill's return and his cameo in Black Adam, I wouldn't be the least bit shocked at all if they're currently figuring out a way to work Cavill into The Flash to hype up his return to the big screen while also making it clear that they're not going to make the same mistakes. After all, if Cavill returns to play Superman but all the problems of the character remain, nobody's going to care. Black Adam? Big success. It managed to bring in $67 million in its opening weekend. Actually, it was $140 million over the whole thing, or domestic, whatever. Anyway, it did good. It was Dwayne Johnson's largest weekend opening of any movie he's ever done. The movie itself, it's good. It's not top tier, but it's a really, really fun watch. There's a couple parts in it that I'm like, okay, but once again, it was a fun watch. And when you try to shoehorn in the Justice Society with no backstories, I mean, they did the best they could. It wasn't bad at all. It was fun. They made a conscious effort to reintroduce the established Justice League cast. Getting Henry Cavill physically in the movie was just the cherry on top. Warner Brothers knows they have a problem, and there have been a ton of shakeups. They know they had to start over, but they also know they had to have some good ideas, one of which was hiring Henry Cavill in the first place. With the reports and the leaks that he's here for the long term, I think it's very possible that James Gunn himself has a hand in this. I really do. Gunn is all about finding the cast he likes and sticking with them, which is why certain actors appear in almost all of his projects. The DCEU, they needed a showrunner, and Gunn came in clutch. If I had to guess, I would say Warner Brothers is basically giving James Gunn unlimited funding and power and trust, so I wouldn't be shocked at all to hear that he made sure Superman was going to play a major part in the franchise. I'm excited that he is in such a powerful role now. So what happens next? Well, I don't know. We have our Superman. We know he's sticking around for a while. Black Adam confirmed all the original Justice League members. I don't know. I have no idea what to expect from the story. Regardless of the drama with Ezra Miller, the story of The Flash is going to feature a ton of twists and a ton of turns, the multiverse, establishing new characters, having older ones pass the torch. So until we see where The Flash leaves the official DCU timeline, it's hard to tell where Henry Cavill's new projects are going to fit. I 100% believe he's getting a standalone movie, but I'll eat my entire comic store if it's actually called Man of Steel 2. You heard me right. As for Justice League 2, I also 100% believe we're going to get another Justice League movie eventually, but I'm worried about Warner Brothers rushing it to the finish line. Black Adam 2 sounds like a solid move. I mean, Shazam 2 is coming. The first movie's a success. People want to see a showdown between Superman and the other character, which seems like it's going to happen at least a little bit. So I'm excited to see Cavill back. I'm remaining realistic in my expectations, though. I'm excited James Gunn is taking the helm, but he has a lot of work to do in order to fix the damage that has happened. Hopefully everyone is up to the task, because reviving the DCU is not going to be easy. These characters may be world famous, but it takes more than mediocre action movies to get yourself on the level of the MCU it does. Warner Brothers and DC better bring their A game, because if this whole revival plan doesn't work, I think the entire DC license could be in jeopardy. I want it more than anybody, and the same as you guys. I want to be able to go watch my major Marvel movies and MCU and all of those timelines and phases, and I want to do the exact same thing with DCEU. That would be awesome. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you soon.